Hey guys, welcome to my first drive video on BMW's all-electric iX. I'm a bit late to the party with this particular car, and that's because, well, I was offered one at the back end of last year, but I couldn't make it to that event. This morning, I got up to come down here to film this car that I've got for 24 hours, and I managed to pull my back as I was leaving the house. So I'm in absolute agony, hence me doing the intro from inside the interior. But what an interior and what a car to have with a bad back. I couldn't have picked a better car, essentially. I'm glad that it's not a low-slung sports car. In the UK, the iX starts at £70,000. For that, you'll get the base model X-Drive 40 Sport. That has 326 horsepower and a claimed 256 miles of range. You then move up to the X-Drive 50 M Sport, which this particular press car is. These retail at £97,000 on the road before options. In fact, this one weighs in at £120,000. So it has more than £20,000 worth of options on it, some of which are really impressive and we will talk about a bit later. But for that, you get 523 horsepower, but most importantly, a claimed range of 379 miles on the WLTP cycle. So we're probably going to expect a realistic range of just over 300 miles. And I think, for me at least, that's the tipping point in an EV. Unless you're using it as a small city car, something like the Mini Electric, I really think that you want your family car, your everyday reliable car, to have a range of at least 300 miles. And that's where I would personally start looking at an electric car if it fitted into my life, because that's not far off what you would get in, let's say, a petrol X5 or a petrol X7. And if 523 horsepower isn't enough for your family bus, well, BMW have just introduced the M60 flagship model. That produces 619 horsepower, but even more impressive than that is 1100 Newton meters of torque. I mean, I've never driven anything that has a torque figure anywhere near that. So absolute insanity, but you'll pay £112,000 base for the M60 flagship model. And just from driving this a couple of miles, I can't see why you'd want any more performance out of, well, a utility vehicle like this. You really wouldn't. This is scary fast. And also the M60 does sacrifice some of its range for that performance. I believe you lose about 30 miles and you get a claimed 346 miles. Still impressive, but if it was me, I would save that 15 grand and spend it on options and spec a car very similar to this particular one. Before we talk about this incredible interior, let's talk about this car's aesthetics on the exterior, because I think that's really its weakest point. I've seen many of these on the road when I was out in Germany towards the back end of last year, and every time I saw one, well, the looks just didn't grow. I think the rear end of the car is probably its best angle. I like the rear light clusters and it doesn't look too bad at the back. The front end definitely does grow on you a little bit each time you see one in real life. I think pictures and film don't do it any justice. But it's the side of the car. The side profile is just so square and boring. I mean, there's just nothing to it. There's no flair, there's no design. The best place to see an iX for me is from the driver's seat, because you can't see much of the styling on the outside, and the cabin is just to die for. It is really, really good. You've got this incredible curved display, which I first saw in that i4 M50. It's really nice in here. It really suits the interior, because this was essentially designed for this car, whereas in the i4 it was kind of slapped on the top of a 4 Series dash. Looks incredible in here. It kind of floats on the dashboard. Typically BMW, ergonomically, everything is just set perfect. Driving positions really, really good. These seats are so comfortable. There's so much space in here. We've got a special glass roof which can change shades depending on what setting you have it in, so it can let more or less light in, so there's no need for a blind or anything. It's really futuristic in here. It's not gimmicky. Everything in here is in here for a purpose. It all feels really good. The quality of all the materials, at least above the waistline, are really good. When you get a bit lower, there are some pretty cheap plastics sort of down at sort of ankle level, but anything above that is really, really high quality. I love it. I love this sort of teak wood here that surrounds the crystal iDrive controller. I'm guessing the crystal iDrive controller and seat controls are probably an optional extra. Talking of seat controls, well, they've moved up to the door. That's the first time that I've ever seen electric seat controls on the door of a BMW. That's very Mercedes to me, but I guess they're accessible. They're very easy to use. You've got your presets there. In fact, even opening the door, you have to press a button in this. There is a manual release down here just in case that goes wrong. In terms of storage, well, there's loads. The door bins are really good. The glove box is not the biggest, but this center console, well, you can put massive bottles and stuff in there. There's loads of them. There are drink holders down there, and there's a little tray, a little charging tray down there for your phone. But the drink holders do concern me a little bit. And the reason I say that is there's usually a divide between the passenger and the driver. You know, a traditional center console, and your drink holders are usually at the top and quite secure. I don't like the fact that you can put a tall drink like that down there. If that was to fall out, it would go straight under my pedals, and there's always a reason that cars and even SUVs and stuff have a divide down here, or an area that will stop things like drinks and objects falling down under the pedals. But the fact that you can put bottles of drink there and your phone in there, if you did hit the brakes quite hard, they are very easily going to end up under your pedals. So I think that's a bit of an oversight personally. This car's got the very latest iDrive in it, so iDrive 8. I don't know why they went from iDrive 6 to then calling it operating system 7. It now appears that they've gone back to calling it iDrive again, so it's iDrive 8. And in the short time I've spent behind the wheel of this or that i4, well, it's all a little bit complicated for me. There's a lot going on in here. It's very quick, the graphics are amazing, the displays are unreal, but I'll need to spend a few weeks in one of these to really acclimatise myself to the iDrive 8. And talking about acclimatising myself, well, unfortunately, the climate control is all on touchscreen now, so it's all accessed here. You can hit the climate menu and it brings up, well, all of your seat controls. These are ventilated and heated, massage. You've got the steering wheel heating on there and all of the other sort of normal climate control functions. That's a real shame that it's all touchscreen. I wish that there were still buttons and dials down here with that, but I think that's kind of the way that BMW interiors are going. We're going to find this in all of the facelifted 3 Series that are coming very soon. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this curved display in every single BMW from 2023 onwards, even cars like the 1 and 2 Series. This particular car has the Bowers & Wilkins dynamic surround sound system. I think that's what it's called. And that's part of a £5,000 package. It's incredible. There's a demo that you can hit. So if you sit in one of these in a dealership and it's got that sound system, you've got to do this because it really immerses you in here. You can't believe what you're hearing. It's like being in a sound studio, but even better. You've got speakers everywhere in here. In fact, there's even some apparently in the headrest, and I mean, I can feel and hear sound coming out of absolutely everywhere. So let's see if I can find it. Go into media. I think we come over here to sound. There we go. See, that wasn't actually too hard, was it? I think we've got to turn the volume up, so we'll turn the radio on briefly and then we'll hit this. Right. Honestly, I mean, the hairs on my arm, it's just... the display, everything. So let's kill that. But that is just unreal, like really impressive. If you like your music, you like your sound, then definitely tick that box, because that's a fantastic investment. This is one of the first cars in a long time, I think since maybe my 7 Series, where jumping in the back is almost as comfortable and luxurious and spacious as jumping in the front. There's so much room back here. This rear bench is lovely. We've got the same beautiful quilted leather. It feels so comfortable. I've got loads of headroom. I've got loads of shoulder room. I just fit back here incredibly. And in fact, look at that legroom. That is my driving position. I've jumped out the front seat and got in the back. And that's how much legroom I've got. That is comparable to a long wheelbase 7 Series almost. I'd say between a normal 7 Series and a long wheelbase 7 Series. Certainly a lot more than you would have in your X5, for instance. You pull down this, obviously it's a 3-seater back here if you want it to be, but 2 seats in absolute comfort. Got a lovely armrest. Once again, everything is ergonomically so good. The armrests are where they should be, and I know that sounds obvious, but in a lot of cars they're really not. So very, very comfortable. I've got some vents here, I've got some USB-C ports up here. In fact, I've got an adapter here where I can buy an iPod or an iPad holder that will slot into there. I've got all of my climate controls down here, so we have got climate control buttons in the back, almost better than what we've got in the front. If only you could put them somewhere in the front dashboard. I've also got heated rear seats, probably an option, I don't know, maybe it isn't in this 50 version. And once again, I can see small speakers and stuff everywhere, so I'm sure that incredible sound experience that I had in the front will be repeated back here. But it's just a really nice place to sit. I could spend a lot of time back here as an ex-chauffeur. This is really a car that I would consider if I was still doing that job. It has a range that's pretty much big enough, and it has the feel of luxury and space back here, which is just perfect for that sort of thing, and will obviously then translate to being a very good family car. And I can see why BMW have sold so many of these on their interior alone. It's just such a shame that the exterior isn't as beautiful and well resolved as the interior. This is honestly 10 out of 10. What's not 10 out of 10 is the fact that you can't get it in a 7-seater, so you still have to buy an X7 if you want one of those. And the boot itself is not very big for a car of this size. It's 500 litres with these seats in place. Just to put that into perspective, an X5 is 650 litres, so you do lose a bit of boot space, but you gain a lot of cabin space. Right, let's see what it's like to drive. We're just cruising through this village in absolute silence, as you tend to do in most EVs. It's probably a good time to talk about its ride quality. Now, this 50 model comes standard with the air suspension. That's adaptive air suspension as standard. So when you're in comfort, well, the ride quality is really, really good. Once again, adding to the overall comfort and luxury of this package. We talked about it whilst we were stationary, but when you're on the move, I mean, if anything, it gets even better. There's no tyre roar, no wind noise, even at 60, 70 miles an hour, literally nothing. So it's a very calming place to sit. And I do say that in most of my EV videos, although everyone thinks I absolutely despise and hate them, they definitely have a place, and they're definitely very good at making you feel very calm, especially in traffic jams or in built up areas and out in the countryside. This is quite a choppy B road. It's probably too small for a car like this. Hopefully we don't see another iX coming the other way, because I think we'll be in a bit of trouble. And while we're on that point, well, I had to put this in a car park earlier on, and it was very tricky. It's a very difficult car to park, although I have all of the fancy cameras in here, the surround view, etc. Parking sensors absolutely everywhere. It's really difficult to judge where the wheels are, especially when you've only got it for a few hours. I'm sure living with this for a few weeks, you'd soon get more used to that, but I think it's always going to be difficult to figure out exactly where the wheels are. In fact, it reminds me very much of the Rolls-Royce Cullinan. I had one of those for Fashion Week a few years ago, and although it got easier during the week, the first few days I was really struggling to park it and place it on the road, probably because it was so big and so square. And this is a very similar shape, and I'm sure it's actually very similar dimensions. In fact, if you think about it, it's a very similar car, because it's a very good ride, it's very spacious and luxurious inside, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper, and it doesn't have a V12 under the bonnet, but it does have similar performance. In fact, I reckon out of a junction like that, the way this responds, it's probably quicker than the Rolls. It's just insane, but that's nothing new. All EVs are so fast, and that's what they talk about. I think this particular 50 model has a claimed 0 to 60 figure, or 0 to 62 figure of 4.6 seconds, which is monumentally fast for a car that weighs 2.6 tons. But this feels even quicker than that. Unfortunately, I don't have my timing gear with me today, but I can guarantee that this is going to match, if not beat, that claimed 4.6 seconds, because it's so fast. It just gets up and absolutely flies. You don't need the M60 model. I mean, there is no way you're going to use more performance than this car offers. In fact, like with all EVs, that will wear off very quickly, and you'll start focusing on other things. And thankfully, this car's got a lot of other things to focus on. It's a very nice place and cabin to sit in, so I'm sure that outright performance will wear off very quickly, but it is very handy and safe when you've got the family in and full boot of luggage, etc. You're coming onto a dual carriageway or motorway, or pulling out of a dodgy junction. You know, this thing is up to the speed limit like that, and that is safe. To me, it's really safe, instead of being in something that's underpowered and, you know, you're risking someone running into you as you pull out the junction. So there is an element of safety attached to something that is as fast and reactive as this. It's just crazy. It really is. Let's see what it's like when you do push it on a little bit. So let's go into my modes here, and then we can cycle through to sport. There we go. So everything stiffens up. The throttle response is a bit sharper. I think I even felt something in the seat change then, but I might be making that up. Steering a little bit heavier, but not overly heavy. While we're talking about steering, quickly, this steering wheel, well, I wasn't a fan of it in pictures. I like round steering wheels personally, but I have to say it kind of makes sense when you're in here. It all works very well. You're not going to be fully sideways doing oppo lock with this, so I don't think it's going to be too bad in use. We're coming up to the national speed limit sign now. Let's see what this is like, but obviously I haven't got paddles or anything down here, but let's just push it a little bit. Well, that's straight up to 60. Brakes are probably the biggest sort of weak point of this car, and I find that with a lot of EVs, and all the manufacturers say or claim that's because obviously you've got a lot of regeneration, which you have, especially when you put it into B mode, which I believe is braking mode. So if you pull that back, pull it back to put in drive, you pull it back again, you get B on the dashboard, and that basically allows you to drive this car with one pedal, with the accelerator pedal. So as I come off the accelerator pedal, that's no brakes. That's slowing me down at a really good rate. So if you anticipate traffic, etc., you looked ahead, you could essentially drive this car on one pedal. I prefer to drive it in a sort of more authentic mode, the drive mode. So when you come off the accelerator, it just coasts. But it doesn't just coast all the time. If you're following traffic and they start slowing down in front of you, it will actually start applying brakes and slowing you down with the traffic, even if you've got active cruise, etc., turned off. And it's quite a handy feature, especially around town. That'd be really, really good. Safe and less hassle for you, the driver. I'm sure you could disable that if you wanted to, because it might be frustrating in certain scenarios, but it's quite a cool feature all the same. And I believe this also reads traffic lights, etc., because, well, earlier on I was coming up to a set of red traffic lights. I came off the accelerator and it started to slow down for me. So it anticipates things like that, which is really cool, and I can see that sort of trickling into all of the BMW models in years to come. Let's talk about the negatives that I've discovered in the short time I've had this car, aside from its looks on the outside. There are some quite bad blind spots in here. These A-pillars are absolutely massive, and I found that driving through Farnborough, when I was around busy junctions or pedestrian crossings, etc., it's really difficult to see around them, especially this particular one. So beware of that. It hides a lot of things, pedestrians, cyclists, cars, whatever. It's a big blind spot. You've got your obvious blind spots down the side of the car, but actually they're not too bad on this car considering how big it is. And rear visibility, although it's not bad, it's not brilliant. Another negative, we've already kind of talked about it, is how big this car is and how difficult it is to maneuver, and especially park in a traditional parking space. It's such a big car, this. It feels to me bigger than even the X7. I'm sure it's not. Maybe it's a little bit wider, but it's just really, really difficult. I'm sure it will get easier with time living with this car, but yeah, if you live in a small village or in certain places in London that have like width restrictors, etc., well, yeah, I don't envy you owning one of these, because they are a big old bus. You know, all of this amazing interior space and luxury comes at a price when you're trying to navigate it down a small road or put it into an average size parking space. Let's get to some kind of conclusion. It's an incredible piece of technology. It's an incredible car, it really is. I'd heard so many good things about the iX before jumping in this one and trying it out, but there's no getting away from how ugly it is. And I know looks are subjective, but to me, I just couldn't own this car because I'd have to walk up to it every day. I'd have to be seen in it. And I just don't think it's a very good looking car at all. But it's so amazing in here, that the comfort, the technology, the layout, the space, the feeling of being behind this wheel, that it does pretty much offset its looks. So if you don't mind how it looks and you're not offended by the way it looks, then this is a fantastic car. It's not cheap, but they're apparently selling like hotcakes already. I mean, what are they, 90, 100 grand minimum, really. You want to get the 50. I would normally recommend the lower model because that normally gives you more range, but in the iX's case, it's actually the 50 which is the sweet spot. Obviously it is more expensive than the 40, but it comes with more standard equipment, etc., and you've got that crazy performance. Not that you need it, but you have got it there if you want it. You're not buying one of these to have fun on a Sunday morning down your favorite A or B road, are you? You're buying it as a practicality, you know. It's a family wagon. And on that note, it would make a fantastic family car. It really would. If you've got the means of charging it at home, I think if you could afford one of these, you've probably got a garage, so you've got a fast charger. With its realistic 300-mile range, that is more than enough for the majority of people. And even if you're going further than that with your family, etc., you're gonna want to stop after 250, 300 miles anyway, so you could charge it up. I really think this is one of the first EVs that has made a lot of sense to me. You know, it has a purpose. It's practical, it's spacious, it's very comfortable, and it's very relaxing to drive. But I think on top of being a family car, I really think, and if there's any chauffeurs out there watching this, as an ex-chauffeur, this would be a fantastic chauffeur's car. It really, really would. And much of that is because of the rear bench. It's just so comfortable, so spacious back there. It'd be a really cool car to chauffeur clients around in. And if I was still a chauffeur, I would strongly consider one of these. I would get it all blacked out and hopefully hide as much of the design on the outside as possible. But I just think in terms of the client experience, or your kids' experience, if it's a family car, yeah, it's going to be hard to beat this. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this video now because I'm in a lot of pain. I need to go and see my chiropractor as soon as possible. Even though I'm in one of the most comfortable cars on the planet, I've obviously done something quite severe. So I will see you at another video very soon. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you listened to my positives about this car, because there's plenty of positives, and you don't think I just hate all EVs. Until next time, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Cheers. Jesus, that's just not right.